To follow along with the written version of this tutorial and download the interactive PDF, use the links on screen now in the description below or by going to clubcrochet.com/rock. Hey there, it's Louie, and in this video tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to crochet this adorable pet rock. Isn't it just so stinking cute? I'm so proud of it. When my dad was a kid, he actually had his own pet rock, so I couldn't help but think, oh my gosh, that's such a fun idea for a crochet design. You could make your own little customizations and make it your own little friend. And with this new season of Woolly Woods, it was the perfect opportunity to start the season off. So this is a new theme season all about woodland creatures and forests. We'll be making mushrooms and trees and Bigfoot and gnomes and of course our own little pet rock. This pattern is going to be so cool because it's actually a crash course in crochet. It'll teach you everything you need to know about how to crochet for complete beginners. So you don't need to know how to crochet at all before you get started here. If you're an advanced crocheter though, don't worry, I got your back. I'm also an advanced crocheter and I always like to add in advanced techniques so you can learn something new as you crochet our patterns. In this video tutorial, we'll be learning how to make things like bobble stitch eyes or additions to your crochet, like making little sprouts or mushrooms or little butterflies or even a pet frog for your pet rock. We'll be learning little pipe cleaner pickaxes and gems and a whole bunch of different patterns and tutorials like that. If you want to find links for anything I'm talking about in this video tutorial, all the links will be in the description down below, and a quick link to the Woolly Woods themed season will be clubcrochet.com/woods. If you want to like and subscribe, that would be really great. If you hit the little bell icon, you can get notified when we come out with new video tutorials and new patterns and live crochet alongs, which we do every single week and are a great opportunity for you to ask questions if you get stuck at any point in this pattern or any of my patterns. If you're a beginner crocheter and you need a little bit of extra help, check out my Crocheting 101 series that you can find at crocheting101.com. It's a more segmented crochet tutorial that'll take you slower through how to crochet. So if this crash course is just a little too much for you, that's a great place to get started. You can also join the Discord channel and Facebook group linked in the description. Those are great options for posting pictures of your crochet or just asking questions to the community. There's a left-handed and right-handed version of this video available in the description as well, so make sure to watch the one that works best for you. And time codes, so you can quickly jump around in this video, jump straight to how to crochet the eyes or how to sew it closed. Again, links for everything in the description down below. Okay, well, I think that's everything I wanted to go over. Let's talk about all the materials that you're going to need to crochet this pattern along with me. For this crochet pattern, you're going to need the following materials. Let's start with the yarn. We're going to be using worsted weight cotton yarn in this video tutorial just because it's my favorite size yarn to use, but you can really use any kind of yarn you want. In fact, blanket yarn will be really cool. You make a gigantic rock with that. But for me, I'm going to be using our worsted weight cotton yarn. This is our special Club Crochet Amigurumi cotton that's available in our shop via kits. If you want to get a kit with all the materials that we're going to be using in this video tutorial, links will be in the description. The colors you're going to need is, of course, our main color, which we're going to be using gray, and then you'll need some white for the eyes of your pet rock. If you want to make other additions like frogs and little mushrooms, you're going to need other additional colors, of course, though. We'll also be using safety eyes in this video. I'm going to be using size 10 millimeter safety eyes in this video, but you can use anywhere between size 6 to size 12 safety eyes. If you want to get a bottle of eyes like this, these are also available in the shop and a great way to support this channel. For the tools we're going to be using a size G 4 millimeter crochet hook for this video, and that's because we're using worsted weight yarn. If I'm using a larger yarn, I want a larger crochet hook. So if you're using blanket yarn, for example, you might want up to a size L crochet hook or even larger. It just depends on what kind of yarn you're using, but we're going to be using a size G6 4 millimeter crochet hook for this video tutorial. You'll also need a darning needle to get in and out of hard to reach stitches. It's really not super necessary unless you're making all the other customizations, but a crimped end like this does help to get in and out of hard to reach stitches, and it's really nice to have a nice darning needle like this. Also available in the shop, by the way. Besides that, you'll need some scissors for cutting stuff, and then some stuffing to fill it up with, and maybe some black thread if you want to add a little smile. Again, kits with all the materials that you see here are available in the shop if you're interested. The last thing I want to go over is that we also have a challenge that's going on right now for a crocheting your own pet rock. Watch to the end of the video to learn how to enter that challenge, and you could win your own seasonal crochet kit. All right, well, without further ado, let's get hooking and start by making our little pet rock. Okay, we're gonna get started with our gray yarn, and we're gonna start with the magic loop method. Now, if you've never made the magic loop before, I'm about to show you my favorite way to do it, but I actually have a video tutorial up here that'll go into more detail and a few different options for making the magic loop. The magic loop is a really simple way to get started in crocheting in the round. It makes a little tiny circle that you'll continue working around in a spiral to make your piece bigger and bigger. To make the magic loop, this is my favorite way to do it. There's a bunch of different ways though. You wanna take the yarn facing downwards towards the ground, have it hanging down like that. Pinch it with your middle finger and thumb together like this, and then go around your index finger and middle finger 2 times. We're looking to create an X on the front towards you and 2 parallel lines on the back away from you. See how there's 2 lines lined up? Now we're going to take this tail end here and this other end attached to the ball, and we're going to place it between our ring and pinky finger and hold it in. So now you have that X and parallel lines on the back. With your back of your hand facing you, we can take our crochet hook and we're going to go under this first bar and then hook onto the second. Pull that second bar under the first one and then loop it around like that to create a little loop at the end. Now going over that first bar, we want to yarn over with the second bar of yarn. So we're going to push that over the crochet hook with our index finger to make it onto the crochet hook. And then we're going to pull that through the loop on the hook to create a chain. The easiest way to do that is to twist the crochet hook to line it up with the hole and then scoop it through like that. That's going to create something called a chain and going to keep everything held in place. Now you can actually pull it off of your fingers and you have a nice magic loop here. What's really cool about the magic loop is you can pull this tail end and it'll start to close that loop up. Now we're going to close it up about to the size of a dime. So maybe about that big. And we're going to work our first stitches for our pattern into this magic loop. So we're going to work all of our stitches into this magic loop. Now the main stitch for this pattern is going to be the single crochet, which we're going to learn in just a moment. But this pattern is also going to be worked in a round without turning. So we're going to keep working around in a spiral. To start round 1, we're going to do 6 single crochets into the magic loop. Now for a single crochet, all you need to do is take your crochet hook, hold it like a spoon, like this, and we're going to go into the stitch. In this case, the hole in the center is actually our stitch. We're going to take our crochet hook, go under the stitch, and then we're going to yarn over with the end attached to the ball. I'm going to take this end, place it over the crochet hook, and then we're going to take that and pull it under the stitch, aka the hole, and now you'll have 2 loops on the hook, 1, 2. Now we can yarn over again. This time we're going over the stitch, and we're going to take the end attached to the ball again, yarn over the crochet hook, and we're going to pull through the 2 loops on the hook by twisting to line up the hole and then scooping to get under both of those loops. And that's going to be the basis of a single crochet. We're going to be making this pretty much this entire pattern using that same stitch. For this first round, we want to do 6 of those single crochets into this magic loop. So there's our first one. You can count them by counting the V that's along the top right there. So we got 1. We'll do another one into the center of the magic loop. We're going to yarn over, pull it under the magic loop. Going over the magic loop, we'll yarn over again and pull through 2, 1, and 2. And that's going to be 2 single crochets. Again, we want 6, so let's go a little quicker now. This will be 3. There we go. And then 4. 5 into the magic loop. And then one more will be 6. Okay, so now you should have 6 single crochets in the magic loop. Now, if you count back from where this loop is coming out, you'll be able to count 6 V's. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. That's going to be your first one that you made. Now keep track of where that first one is because we're going to work into that for our next round. But before we get to the next round, we want to use a stitch marker to keep track of the ends of our rounds. Now there's a couple options for stitch markers. You can use these plastic stitch markers like this, or a safety pin will work. You just place it under where that first loop is like that, and then you lock it into place. You want to make sure you're under both of those loops. However, I actually find it's a lot easier to just use an extra strand of yarn for this. So cut a piece of yarn. This is actually probably way longer than we need, but it'll work for right now. And we're just going to place that right into the center of the magic loop like that. Once it's in the center of that magic loop, we can pull this tail end and it'll close the hole up around this extra strand of yarn. So we're going to pull it closed like that, and it'll keep everything locked into place. Now I'm going to pull this out just enough where there's just a little bit of a tail poking through, hold it over, and we're going to fold this over our end like that. And see, that line is going to mark where the ends of our rounds are. So we're going to keep using that line to keep track of where the ends of the rounds are. Okay, so that's going to be the end of round 1. Now we're into round 2, and here is this first stitch of round 2 can actually be the most difficult one because it's kind of hard to see where you want to place the crochet hook. For round 2, we're simply going to be doing 2 single crochets, which we did 6 single crochets in the last round, so each of these are single crochets. We're going to do 2 of those into every single one of the stitches that we made in our last round. What's important though is you want to make sure that you get under both of these loops of each stitch. So when you look at the top of the stitch, you'll see 2 loops. These are the front and the back loop. The front one is the one closest to you and the back is the one furthest away from you. But for our stitches, we want to make sure our crochet hook is under both of these at the same time. Once you're under both of those loops, we can do a regular single crochet. So the easiest way I find is to find that first one by counting backwards from where your loop is, and then find your first stitch, place your crochet hook right under that front bar, and just kind of wiggle your way into the stitch so that you can get under both of those at the same time. Once you're under both of those loops, we can yarn over with the end attached to the ball right here. We yarn over our crochet hook, hold everything in place, and we're going to do that same twist and scoop to really make sure you're under that first stitch. The first one, honestly, is the hardest one. Once I'm under that first stitch, notice how I pulled it a little tighter to make both of these loops more uniform. That's just kind of part of habit at this point, but it does help keep everything really nice and symmetrical. Okay, so we have 2 loops on our hook. We can finish our first single crochet by yarning over again and pulling through those 2 loops on the hook, 1 and 2. So that's going to be our first stitch done of round 2. Like I said, round 2 is just going to be an increased stitch into every single stitch all the way around, which means that we're going to do 2 of those single crochets into the same stitch. To find that same stitch, if you follow the V at the bottom of your single crochet right here, it'll point you directly into where that first stitch was made. So we want to put our crochet hook into that same space that we made our first single crochet. So we're going to take our crochet hook, go into that same first stitch. Again, the easiest way is to point where that little arrow is pointing. Point our crochet hook right there and kind of wiggle our way in like that. And we're going to make another single crochet by yarning over, pulling through the stitch with a twist and a scoop, and then yarning over again and pulling through 2 loops, 1 and 2. That's going to be our first increase stitch. Now again, an increase means just 2 single crochets in the same stitch. We're going to be doing these increase stitches a lot more later on in different places, but for this round, we just want to put one of those increase stitches, aka 2 single crochets, into every one of our 6 single crochets from our first round. That's going to bring your stitch count up from 6 stitches up to 12 stitches. So by the end of this round, we'll actually have 12 stitches around. And we'll know we're at the end of the round when we have just finished the stitch right before where that blue line is. So let's go ahead and work into our next stitch and do another increase. So if you want to follow that little V right there, that is going to point to where your last stitch was made, but this time we want to work into the next stitch over. So we're going to go right over to this next hole right here, and we're going to make sure that our crochet hook is under both of those bars simultaneously. So we're going to take our crochet hook, go under those 2 bars, 1 and 2 like that, yarn over with the yarn attached to the ball, pull it through the loop. You don't need to pull it out a bunch, that's just fine. And then we can yarn over again and pull through those 2 loops, 1 and 2 like that. All right, there's the start of our second single crochet. We're going to do another one into the same stitch. So into that same exact stitch, yarn over, pull through, going over the stitch, yarn over and pull through 2, 1 and 2. All right, we're going to just keep doing those all the way around. So let's go into our next one right here. This will be our 3rd stitch and our 3rd increase, which means we're going to be doing our 5th and, into the same stitch here, 6th single crochet, because each increase is 2 single crochets. So that was our 6th single crochet. Here's our 7th into the next stitch. And then our 8th single crochet is going to go into that same exact stitch by following that V because it's going to be another increase. So for this round, every even stitch is going to be in the same stitch as the previous one. So that'll be 9, another one into the same stitch, will be 10, and then 2 more right here, 11, and 12. Okay, so that's going to be the end of round 2. Now we have a couple things we want to go over. The first is that we want to pull our stitch marker up. So we're going to take this blue yarn here, and we're just going to fold it right over the end to keep track of the ends of our rounds. We're just going to hold it off to the side. We also are going to try working around our tail end here. This is going to be the tail end from the very beginning. Now, if you don't work in this tail end, it's okay. It's not the end of the world, but you can have the very center of your rock or the very center of your crochet here open up if you don't secure this safely. Now, you don't, again, it'll be okay. It won't fully come undone, but it is nice to secure it really safely. The easiest way to secure it safely is just simply to crochet around it as we do our stitches. So as we do our stitches in round 3, which we're about to get to, we are going to also work around this tail end for just the first few stitches around, and it'll just keep this all secured in place. All right, for round 3, our next stitch is going to be right after where this blue stitch marker is showing, so right here. And we still want to make sure that we're under both loops for this round. In fact, every round is going to work under both loops just like that. For this round, round 3, we're going to do 1 single crochet into the first stitch. So just a regular single crochet into the first stitch. And then we're going to do an increase into the second stitch. An increase again means 2 single crochets in the same stitch. That's going to be our repeat. 1 single crochet, then 1 increase. And we're going to keep doing that all the way around. 1 single crochet, 1 increase, single crochet, increase, repeated all the way around. That's going to bring your stitch count up again 6 more stitches, which will bring our stitch count up from 12, which is our current stitch count from the end of round 2, up to 18, which will be our stitch count at the end of round 3. So let's start by going into our first stitch. It's going to be right after that blue yarn, under both loops, 1 and 2, like that. Yarn over, pull it through the stitch, and then yarn over again and pull through 2. There's our first single crochet. I actually forgot to work around our tail end here, so we'll do it in just a second. Again, this is a nice thing where you can kind of do it wherever as long as you're doing it in the first few rounds. All right, so there's our first single crochet. Our next stitch is going to be an increase. We want to go into the next stitch over. We're not going to follow that V into that same stitch because we want to do it in the next one. So right here, wiggle our crochet hook in, yarn over, and pull it through the stitch. All right, so this is going to be the start of our first increase. But before I finish that up, let's work around our tail end. We're going to take our tail end here, and we're just going to place it in between the 2 loops on the hook and the end attached to the ball right there. Just place it in between and let it just kind of sit there. Now we can yarn over with the end attached to the ball. Notice how I'm kind of holding it down with my index finger to keep everything in place. We yarned over with the end attached to the ball, and we're going to pull it through the 2 loops to finish the first stitch of our first increase in the round. Okay, so there's the first stitch of the first increase. We're going to do another stitch for that increase. We're going to follow where that V is to go into the same stitch, like that. Make sure this tail end from the very beginning is placed over the crochet hook as well. And then we're going to take the tail end, or the end attached to the ball, yarn over the crochet hook, pull it through the stitch, then going over the stitch, yarn over again, and pull through 2, 1, and 2. And that's going to be the end of our first increase in round 3. Again, round 3's repeat is 1 single crochet and then 1 increase, repeated 6 times around. So let's do our second repeat here. We're going to do 1 more repeat around this tail end before we cut it close. So our next stitch is going to be right after where this one was placed. So if this last increase was done right here, the next stitch will be right here, making sure we're under both loops and the tail end from the beginning. Let's take our crochet hook, go under the next stitch, and we're going to do a single crochet to start. Yarn over, pull through the stitch, yarn over again, not with this tail end, but with the end attached to the ball. And there's the first single crochet of our second repeat. Next, we want to do an increase into the next stitch. So we're going to go into the next stitch over. Again, the next one's going to be right here, making sure we're under both of those loops. Yarn over with the end attached to the ball and pull it under the stitch and going over the stitch, pull through 2, 1, and 2. All right, that's going to be our second single crochet. Now we want to do that as an increase, so we want another stitch into the same place as that last one. So we're going to follow that V into that same stitch, yarn over again, pull it through the stitch, going over, yarn over, and pull through 2, 1, and 2. All right, so there's our repeat. 1 single crochet, 1 increase, 1 single crochet, 1 increase. We don't need to work around this tail end any longer. In fact, I'm just going to cut it nice and close so we don't have to worry about it. We're going to use this for stuffing later on. And we're just going to keep doing that repeat all the way around. Notice how I just pulled it off to the side, and I'm just going to ignore it as we go. And we'll just keep doing that repeat. So we got 1 single crochet in the next right here, and then an increase into the stitch after. 1 and 2 into that same stitch. Our stitch count should go up to 18 stitches around by the end of this round. We actually only have a few more to go. And if you want to count your stitches, all you need to do is count the V's along the border and the edge of your rounds. Okay, last repeat here, 1 single crochet and then 1 increase. There's 1 and 2 in that same stitch. Okay, so you should have 18 stitches around. We'll pull our stitch marker up now and continue on to round 3. Look at that, you're going. We got a little circle going. You can kind of see how every round's gonna make it bigger and bigger, so we're creating the top of our rock right now. Okay, so for our next round, round 4, we're going to start, you're gonna start to see our repeat going, our increasing repeat. So for round 4, we're going to, instead of doing 1 single crochet before we do an increase, we're going to do 2 single crochets. So 1 single crochet in the first, 1 single crochet in the next, and then an increase stitch. So 2 single crochets, 1 increase. Then we're going to repeat that same process 6 times around, all the way around our piece, which is going to increase us up by another 6 stitches. So that's going to bring our stitch count up from 18, which is our current stitch count, again, if you count the V's along the edge, up to 24 stitches around, which is going to be the end of our stitch count by the end of round 4. Okay, let's get started with our first repeat. We're going to go right after where this little line is. That's our stitch marker. So into that first stitch right here, yarn over, pull under the stitch, going over, yarn over, pull through 2. So there's 1 single crochet, and then we want 1 into the next stitch right here. Okay, there's 2 single crochets. Now we want to start our repeat. Our repeat again is 2 into the same stitch. I'm sorry, our increase. So we're going to go into the next stitch here, and we're going to do 2 single crochets in that same stitch. So we got 1, and then another one in that same stitch will be 2. Okay, so there's the end of our first repeat for round 4. 2 single crochets, 1, 2, 1 increase right here, 1, 2 in the same stitch. If you want to look a little closer at your stitches so you can see the differences between a single crochet and an increase, if you look really close right here, you'll see this right here is the bottom of a single crochet. We got 1 V going into 1 stitch. These 2 right here are an increase. 2 single crochets going into 1 stitch. So if you can start to see the difference between your stitches, it'll help you later on keep count. Okay, let's keep doing that repeat though. We're going to be doing 2 single crochets. So there's 1 and 2 single crochets, and then an increase. So the next stitch right here, 2 single crochets in the same stitch. There's 1 and 2. All right, I'm just going to keep doing that repeat of 1, 2, and then an increase. We want 6 of those repeats total to bring your stitch count all the way up to 24. I'll just keep going a little bit quicker now. And hey, if you haven't yet, please consider liking this video down below, subscribing to the channel, and hitting that little bell icon so you get notified when we come out with new videos. We do live streams all the time. In fact, we're going to do a pretty decent amount of live streams for Pet Rocks throughout this next month. So if you like and subscribe, you can join a live crochet along where I'll crochet a rock live on camera and you can ask any questions, get help, or just hang out and crochet along with me. Okay, so that's going to be the end of round 4. You have 24 stitches around now. You can see our piece is getting bigger and bigger. And now we're on round 5. This is going to be the last round of increases for a classic rock. For round 5, you can kind of see the pattern going on now, right? This round, we're going to do 3 single crochets and then an increase repeated 6 times around. So in the last round, we did 2 and then an increase. This round, we're doing 1, 2, 3 single crochets and then an increase. You can kind of see how that's just going to make it bigger and bigger and bigger. We're going to add another 6 single crochets into the stitch count at the end of this round, which will bring our stitch count up from 24 to 30 stitches around. So for round 5, it's 3 single crochets. We've got 1, 2, and 3 single crochets. and then our increase. So 2 in the same stitch after that. So there's 1 and 2 in that same stitch. We're just going to keep repeating that around. 3 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, and then our increase right here. 1 and 2. So I'll just keep repeating that until I get to the end of this round. Now, after this round is going to be our opportunity to make our rock bigger. And you're kind of seeing that pattern of adding 1 additional single crochet between increases will make our piece bigger and bigger and bigger. So if you want to make your rock bigger after this, all you need to do is add an additional single crochet between increases for every additional round. So for example, let's finish this round up. We have 1 more repeat here. We've got 3 single crochets, 1, 2, 3 single crochets in a row, 1, 2, 3, and then our increase right here will be 1 and 2. Okay, so that'll be the end of round 5. Now we can pull our stitch marker up here and we can continue on. Like I said, if you want to make your rock bigger, this is your opportunity. You can make a larger and larger diameter here before we start adding the height of our rock. This is your opportunity to make a bigger and bigger rock. Now, personally, I like it this size, so we're actually not going to increase it any more than this. But if you were to increase it more, your next round would be 4 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then an increase, 1, 2. And then you would keep doing that repeat around. So that'd be another 4 single crochets, increase all the way around, which would bring your count up 6 additional stitches. So we'd go from 30 to 36 stitches in that case. And then you would keep doing that repeat over and over to get bigger and bigger and bigger. You can make a gigantic rock doing that. So for example, if you did 4 single crochets in that round, the next round after that, you do 5 single crochets and then an increase and keep doing that repeat all the way around. The thing you want to keep in mind, however, is that you're going to also have to add in additional rounds of decreasing when you get to the end of your piece. Now, this is very advanced talk, but later on, we're going to get to decreasing, which is the opposite of an increase. Instead of adding a stitch in each round, we're going to remove a stitch in each round. And we're going to get to that way later on around round, I think, 11 or 12. But in this case, we're not going to be doing further increases. So this is going to be the diameter of our rock for this video. But there is your instructions for if you want to make your rock bigger. Now, the next thing we're going to do is make our rock taller. We're going to do this by adding rounds of just single crochets. So we're not going to do any increases in this next round. This is going to be round 6. And for round 6 through 11, at least 6 rounds, we're going to be adding just rounds of single crochets. So I'm going to go ahead and get that started. You should still have 30 stitches around, and this is just going to be your opportunity to add more height. And we're literally just doing single crochets all the way around. If you want to count your stitches, you should have 30 stitches around for each one of these rounds. For this first round, I'm not going to do anything fancy. We're just going to do single crochets all the way around. In fact, you can just do that. You don't need to do anything fancy. However, after this round, I'm going to show you how to add some detail to your rock really simply by using a stitch called the bobble stitch. The bobble stitch is probably one of my favorite stitches to do, and we're going to get to it in just a moment. But you don't have to add this. In fact, it'd be perfectly fine to just do regular single crochets all the way around. But after this round, I'll show you how to do that bobble stitch. Again, if you want to continue adding height to this, we're going to do at least 6 rounds of these single crochets into every stitch around. But you can add more. You can make this taller and taller and taller if you want. I have one rock that I made that is actually really tall. Here, let me show you. This one I made has like, I think 11 or 12 rounds of single crochets. You can see how it's adding more and more height. And all these little bumps around here is what I'm about to teach you. Okay, let's put this to the side though. And finish up our first round of just single crochets. That'll be the end of round 6 coming up in just a moment. There we go. Okay, so this will be the end of round 6. And now we are on to round 7. We want to do at least 6 rounds of these increases. I'm going to pull my stitch marker up here. 6 rounds of these single crochets. But now we are going to start to add detail to our piece. And we're going to do that by doing bobble stitches just sporadically in your piece. You can kind of put these however often you want and however big that you want. Here's a good example of 2 little bumps here. It just creates little bumps on your piece and little irregularities that make it more, I don't know, more detailed, more customized. So we're going to start this by doing, I'm just going to start by doing 1 single crochet into our next round. This is going to be round 7, another round of just single crochets. And now we're going to do our first bobble stitch. Bobble stitches come actually in a lot of different sizes. I call them, they go from bumps to mini bobbles to bobble stitches to bulky bobble stitches. But they're all made pretty much the same way by just repeating a step. So we're going to start by making just a regular size bobble stitch, which is going to be a relatively large bobble stitch, but it'll be a good way to get started here. To make a bobble stitch, we're going to yarn over our crochet hook before we even enter the stitch. Then we're going to go into the next stitch. The next stitch again is going to be right after that one, so right here. And we're going to yarn over again and pull a loop through the stitch. Now you should have 3 loops on the hook. We'll yarn over again and pull through just 2 of those loops on the hook. 1 and 2, just like that. That's going to be the first step, or I guess like the first 3 steps of your bobble stitch. What we want to do now is we want to repeat that step however many times you want. I'm at least usually do 2, and at most I usually do 4. Sometimes I do 5, but a normal bobble stitch is 4 of these repeats in a row. So let's go ahead and do another one of those repeats. We yarn over, we go into the same exact stitch as you just worked into. Again, if you want to follow that little V right there, it'll point you to the same stitch. And we're going to yarn over again and pull through that same loop. Yarn over again and pull through just 2 loops, 1 and 2. And there's your repeat again. So this I would call a bump. Let's do it one more bigger. Yarn over again into the same exact stitch right here. Yarn over and pull through. Then yarn over again and pull through 2, 1 and 2. Notice how I'm keeping a pretty tight piece here. You know, you don't want to keep these too loose. You want to keep these relatively tight so that it creates the bobble stitch really tightly and doesn't have any like loose threads. All right, we're going to do one more of those repeats for a classic bobble. Yarn over into the same stitch. You can really see that stitch now. It's kind of getting pulled out. I'm going to yarn over again, pull through. Notice how I do a really big tuck and pull. Then yarn over again and pull through 2, 1 and 2. Okay. So this is a size for what I call a classic bobble stitch. And to finish a bobble stitch up, all you need to do, for a classic bobble, you'll have 5 loops on the hook. For a mini bobble, you'll have 4 loops. And for a bump, you'll just have 3 loops on the hook. We'll do a bump in the next round. But to finish up a bobble stitch, you yarn over and pull through all the loops on the hook. The easiest way to do that is to really twist and scoop to make sure you get under all those stitches. Once you pull under all the stitches, you'll see you create this little tiny bump there. And that's called the bobble stitch. And that's going to just replace one of the single crochet stitches in your round, and which is why you can kind of add these however often you want. Now, I do find that adding these too often is going to make your piece look kind of weird. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me show you that single crochet as well. So after you finish a bobble stitch, you're going to just continue doing single crochets. I highly suggest putting at least 1 single crochet between bobble stitches. It'll make things a lot cleaner. Before the next single crochet, it's going to be in the next stitch over, which if this was the last stitch, which you can really see all these stitches in the same space, the next stitch is going to be right here. And we're just going to do a regular single crochet into that stitch. In fact, for this round, we're going to finish this round up by just doing single crochets all the way around, continuing to just get this bigger and bigger by just doing single crochets. So I'm going to go ahead and continue doing single crochets all the way around. We'll get to the end of the round, and then I'll show you how to make a slightly smaller bobble in our next round. Okay, we're about to finish round 7 here. Pull our stitch marker up. So that's our second round of just single crochets around. Like I said, you want at least 6 of these rounds of just single crochets. Which is going to bring you all the way up to round, after you finish these, will be round 12. But we're on round 8 now. For round 8, we're just going to keep doing a round of single crochets, but this time I'm going to teach you how to do just a slightly smaller bobble stitch. So the first thing we want to do is just do a few single crochets to get away from this bobble stitch. I don't want our second one to be right on top of the other one, but slightly off center from it, and putting 2 of them together kind of looks really cute. You just don't want to overdo it. So I'm just going to do a few single crochets to get started. We pulled our stitch marker up. I'm going to go into the next stitch here. I'm going to show you once you get to a bobble stitch, the V's along the top are kind of spread out a little bit more than normal. So you really want to make sure you're under both of those like that, but you're not under any of the loops of the bobble stitch itself. And then do a single crochet. So let's do a couple more. Let's do one, and let's do one more right here. There you go. So that'll keep us away from that first bobble stitch a little bit, but keep our bump slightly close and just kind of give it some like randomness, but it's not really that random. So now we're going to do something called a bump, which is basically our bobble stitch, but only 2 repeats instead of 4. So this one was 4 repeats. This time we're just going to do 2, and we're going to do it a little quicker. So we're going to yarn over, go into the next stitch right here, and then yarn over again and pull through, then yarn over and pull through 2. 1, 2. So just like how a bobble stitch was made in the first one. And this time, that's our first repeat. We only want to do that twice. So let's do it one more time. Yarn over into that same exact stitch right here. Yarn over again and pull that through. Then yarn over and pull through 2, 1, and 2. Okay. Once you've done that, you'll have 3 loops on the hook. We're going to finish our bump up by yarning over and pulling through all 3 of those loops. And that'll create basically a very tiny bobble stitch. And then after that, all we need to do is just keep doing our single crochets all the way around. So now we're just going to do single crochets all the way till we get to the end of the round. Now, as you can see, these are creating these nice, cute little bumps, completely unnecessary, but very cute, very easy to add detail to your piece. In our next round, I'll just keep crocheting around as I talk. In our next round, we're going to be doing the third variation of these bobble stitches, something called a mini bobble stitch, which is basically the exact same thing as the ones that we just did, but instead of doing 2 repeats or 4 repeats, we're going to do 3 repeats of that. So it'll be yarn over into the stitch, pull through, you get the gist. So there'll only be 3 repeats of that, and it'll make a slightly different size bobble that is somewhere in between the 2 that we've made so far. But in this next round, we're going to be doing those bobble stitches in a different color. We're going to be doing them in white. And the reason we're going to be doing that is it's going to create the bobble stitches for our eyes. Now, you do not have to add your eyes this way, but it does add a lot of detail to the eyes, which is really nice. So let's go ahead and finish this round up, and let's talk about adding your eyes. Okay, so that'll be the end of round 8, by the way. We're on round 9 in our classic pattern. You can add your eyes wherever you want, but there's a few different ways to do so. The first way is going to be simply to just add the eyes onto the piece. No bobble stitches necessary. In this piece, I did a bobble stitch in the very center for our nose. Oh, here, let's get rid of that frog. We'll talk about that later. I did a bobble stitch right here in the center just for a nose for this rock, but for the eyes, I just did a really classic, just pop the eyes in there, locked them on the inside, which I'll show you in a little bit. However, if you want to make your eyes a little bit more simple but cute, I'm going to be using bobble stitches as the whites of our eyes. There's a few different ways you can customize your eyes, but this is actually one of my favorite simple ways to customize your eyes. That's very, I don't know, very cute, but very fun to make. Again, though, there's a bunch of different ways to do this. Instead of doing it the way that I'm about to show you, you could just add your eyes and embroider on a little white around your eyes, or you could paint your eyes. There's a bunch of different methods. We'll talk about that later when we actually are adding our eyes. But for this next round, round 9, I'm going to be creating white bobble stitches that we're going to use as the base of our eyes later on in the piece. You can add these white stitches pretty much anywhere you want, but I like to keep them about 5 stitches apart in round 9. That's just my favorite place to put them, and we're on round 9 right now. But again, you can put them kind of anywhere you want. For your first one, I suggest making it pretty simple, either doing it exactly the way I'm about to show you or not adding these white bobble stitches at all and just connecting the eyes normally. But in the future, after you make your next rock, that's when you can start experimenting and trying to put your bobble stitches in different places or place your eyes in different places. It can be a lot of fun to change up how you add your eyes and give your pet rock a lot of character. For this round though, we're on round 9. There's a very specific space that I like to place my eyes so that they look exactly like this. This is basically what we're making right now. We're going to be placing our eyes right here in the center, and we're going to be doing those by creating mini bobble stitches in white yarn. So before we get started on this round, let's start by grabbing some white yarn. And you actually don't need very much. We're going to be using way less than this. In fact, you only really need maybe about like that much of this yarn. You won't need very much at all, but we're just going to place that white yarn off to the side, and we're going to come back to it in just a moment. We're going to start round 9 by doing 12 single crochets to get to where I like my first eye, which is going to be somewhere around here. So I like to put my face over here where our first 2 bumps are going to be along the back of our piece. So we're going to start by crocheting 12 single crochets to get around to the front. 1, 2, 3. And I like to add these eyes in a bunch of different places. Bobble stitches in a bunch of different places around our piece. I'm going to keep this piece relatively simple, not too complicated, but I also use bobble stitches for things like feet, toes and fingers, like I showed before, noses, and gems for your pet rocks, but we'll talk about that later on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We got 2 more here. We're going to do 11, and right before we finish our 12th stitch, we're going to yarn over and pull through. But before we pull through with our gray yarn, we're going to take our new white yarn. We're just going to place the end in between the 2 loops on the hook and the end attached to the ball, like that. We're just going to place it in between the 2 there, and then we're going to yarn over with our gray yarn and pull it through the 2 loops to kind of lock this white yarn into place. Okay, so now let's make our first mini bobble using white yarn to create our first spot for our eye. To do that, we're going to yarn over with our white yarn and go into the next stitch. So we're going to kind of ignore our gray yarn and just let it float off to the side there. And we're going to do a mini bobble into the next stitch using white yarn. So yarned over with white. I'm holding down the other end of white yarn with my index finger, by the way, just so it doesn't pull out. Once you've yarned over with white, we want to go into the next stitch right here, yarn over with our white again and pull through. Then yarn over with the white again and pull through 2 loops, 1 and 2, like that. So that's going to be the start of our mini bobble stitch. It's just like a bobble stitch, but we're doing it slightly smaller and all in white. So let's do that repeat 2 more times. Yarn over, go into the same stitch where you just worked that first one, so right here. Yarn over again and pull through the loop. Going over the stitch, yarn over and pull through just 2 loops, 1 and 2. There's 2 repeats. We want 1 more of those. Yarn over into the same stitch right here. Yarn over again and pull through. And then going over the stitch, we yarn over and pull through 2, 1 and 2. So now you have 3 repeats, 4 loops total on the hook. The first one's gray, the next 3 are white. Now we want to take our gray yarn here, flip it under the white yarn and yarn over with gray, and then just pull it under all those loops the same way where you twist your crochet hook and scoop it through to make sure you get under all the bobble stitches. And then I always pull the first loop, or both of these ends, a little tighter just to kind of clean it up a little bit. And now we just do a single crochet into the next stitch, which is going to be the one right after we made that mini bobble in gray, and work around your white yarn just to keep it locked into place. Okay, so that's going to be the first eye. I want our eyes to be 5 single crochets away from each other, but I don't want to work around our white yarn for these next 5 stitches. We did 1, we want 4 more. And I actually like to pull this white yarn off to the side. And this is the only reason we're doing this is because if you crochet around the white yarn, it's going to really show through your stitches, which can be a little annoying later on. So this just keeps it a little bit cleaner. So we got 1, 2, 3. Here's our 4th. And we want 1 more right here, 5. But before we finish that up, we take our white yarn back over, place it in between the 2 loops on the hook and the end attached to the ball, just like that. Just place it in between. Doesn't have to be tight, doesn't have to be loose. We'll yarn over with our gray yarn and pull through the 2 loops to lock that white yarn back into place, where we can use it again for our next mini bobble stitch for the next eye. So let's go ahead and do another one of these mini bobble stitches in white to create our next spot for our next eye. So we're going to yarn over with our white yarn, go into the next stitch right here, yarn over again, and pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, 1, 2. So I can go a little quicker now. Yarn over, same stitch, pull through 2, 1, and 2. One more of those repeats, yarn over, same stitch, pull through 2, 1, and 2. Change back over to the gray yarn. Before I even change to the gray yarn though, I'm gonna pull this a little tighter, which is gonna pull that first loop nice and tight, which is gonna be nice. Keep everything held together a little bit easier. We're gonna flip that gray yarn under, yarn over with it with our crochet hook, and pull through all the loops on the hook to finish our second mini bobble stitch in our placement for our second eye. And then we're just gonna single crochet around the white yarn for one last stitch like that, pulled nice and tight. Pull that tighter. We'll pull this other end tighter a little bit to create that bobble stitch a little bit cleaner. And once you've crocheted around that white yarn for that second part, we can cut the yarn relatively close, about that close, and throw it off to the side. We actually don't need our white yarn at all for the rest of this piece. And we can finish this round up by just finishing our single crochets, getting to the end of our round. For this specific round, I'm going to have 11 single crochets after our second mini bobble stitch to get to the end of the round. And I still should have 30 stitches around. So this shouldn't have added any stitches to your stitch count or anything like that. It should keep your stitch count normal. Okay, so let's finish that up. That's going to be the end of round 9. Let's look at our piece here. Wow, looking pretty cute already. You can see these are where we're going to be placing our eyes into it, and I'll show you that in a little bit. Here's our other little bumps on the back. We can add more bumps throughout our piece if we wanted to. We could have changed that third single crochet to a bobble stitch to make it more of a nose, to kind of look a little bit more like this. Or what we're creating right now is just a basic face, and we're going to embroider a mouth on later on as well. But there's a bunch of alternative things that you can do to your eyes, which we'll talk about in a later part of this video or in another video, like adding eyelids, which we'll talk about in a future video, and changing how the eyes look a little bit, which we'll talk about in a future video as well. But for this pattern, we're just going to finish this round up. We're not going to add any more bobble stitches to our piece. We're not going to add any more eyes or anything. We're just going to keep it pretty simple. So we just finished round 9. Now for every rock I make, I want these rounds to go at least up to round 11 before we start adding the face and then decreasing it down. So we want 2 more rounds of just single crochets into our piece, because we just finished round 9. So we want to get to at least round 11 with just single crochet stitches. So now we can do a few more rounds of just single crochet stitches around. So I'm going to do round 10 and 11 right now. We're just going to keep doing single crochets all the way around in our piece. If you didn't want to add any of these mini bobble stitches or bumps or whatever, you don't really need to. You could have just done this entire piece with just single crochet stitches, and it would be a absolutely adorable rock regardless of the bobble stitches. But the bobble stitches give you an opportunity to try out a new stitch, especially if you're a complete beginner, and give you just a little bit more detail to your rock. So I really like adding bobble stitches throughout my piece. I just don't like to overdo it, which is kind of easy to do when you're not paying attention. You're just kind of going. Okay, well, I'm going to finish up these next 2 rounds, and I'll be back at the end of round 11. So I'm currently working on round 10. So I've got 2 more rounds to go. I'll be back in just a moment, and we'll get to adding a face. Okay, and this is going to be the last stitch for round 11 for me. I'll pull my stitch marker up. And before we continue on to round 12, for my piece, by the way, this is as tall as I want it. Again, if you want to add more height, you just keep adding single crochets. It'll be getting bigger and bigger that way. You can make a super tall rock that way. But before I continue on in our piece and start decreasing it down and closing it up, we want to add our face. The first thing we want to do to add our face is we want to add our eyes themselves. Now, if you didn't make these mini bobble stitches, that's going to be a really easy thing to do. The first thing is you want to choose what size you want your eyes. I'm going to be using 10mm eyes in this video just because I think they look really cute as 10mm eyes. They're pretty big eyes for our piece since it's relatively small. But sometimes I like to add them even smaller. This one, for example, is 8mm. So here, if I place this in our piece, you can see that's an 8mm eye, whereas this one is a 10mm eye. And we even have 6mm eyes, which look something like this. you can see the different sizes of eyes and how they would look differently. But in this video, we're going to be just using our 10mm eyes instead. So what you want for your safety eyes is you want these two special safety eyes here and these locking mechanisms on the back. If you don't want to add eyes this way, you can use bullion knots, which I show in a different video, which I'll link to up here in the description. But for this video, we're just going to be adding regular safety eyes. If you want to add safety eyes just regularly into the body and you didn't create these bobble stitches, that's really easy. You just place it in between two stitches like that. Just any of these two stitches, and then on the back you just take this little locking mechanism, place it on the back of this, and just pop it on. You can either place it this way or this way. This way is a little bit more secure but really difficult to do. This way is a little easier to do but can be a little less secure if you're giving this to a baby. I wouldn't use safety eyes at all if I was giving this to a baby though. Okay, so that's how to just simply add safety eyes. If you're adding safety eyes without the bobble stitches, just make sure they're like 5 or so stitches apart. It's really nice that way. But if you want to add your safety eyes into bobble stitches themselves, here's how to do it. You want to take your crochet hook, and first you want to decide, how do you want your eyes to look? Do you want them to be looking out this way? Do you want to be cross-eyed? Do you want to be looking up or down? You got to make that decision before you add the eyes at all. For our case, I'm going to try to make it as classic as I can. So kind of looking like this, looking up and in a little bit, just because I think it's so adorable that way. But often I like to add them looking outwards and looking really goofy, or really looking cross-eyed is fun too. We're going to take our crochet hook and we're going to place it in between these stitches to create a gap for where we want the eyes. So I like to take my crochet hook and see how the mini bobble stitches we made are kind of split into 3 segments. We've got the first segment right here, second segment right here, and third segment right here, and then the other side, 1, 2, 3. I like to place my eyes so that there are 2 segments on the outside and 1 segment on the inside. So on either side, it would be right here would be the first eye, and right here would be the second eye. The best thing to do is find that spot. So we're going to choose right here. I'll use my needle to start and just place the needle in there. It'll create a small little hole, which I'm going to take my crochet hook now, place it where that small hole is, and just place it right in between. And then I just kind of like wiggle my crochet hook to really create a gap like that. See how it's going to create this nice open gap? We're going to take our eye now, place it right where that gap is, and just kind of wiggle it in. You can kind of feel it on the inside. Okay. And don't worry about it looking too perfect right now. We're going to make it better later on. All right, once we have one eye there, we can lock it in the inside. You can place them both before you lock them. Actually, you know what? Let's place them both before we lock them. So that's where the first one's going to be. The second one, we're going to do the other way around so that the two segments are on the outside and the 1 segment's on the inside. So right here, I'm just going to skip the needle part and just go straight to the crochet hook. Wiggle my crochet hook right in there and just kind of wiggle our way in just to create a gap. When you're pulling your crochet hook out, I pull it out and I unhook it like that, being really careful not to pull stitches out. It's going to create a little gap. I'm going to take our other eye, place it right where that gap is, and just wiggle our way into that eye as well. All right, and let's take a look at what we've got working here. That's pretty good. Actually, that's almost perfect. Awesome. We're going to do some tweaking to make it even more perfect later, but now we want to look at the inside of our piece. Now see this one? Well, this one was perfect. See, just the nub on the inside. We're going to take our little end mechanism. I like to have it facing outwards like that. Place it on the inside there and just snap it into place as far as you can. Okay, so that's the first one. Second one here is a little bit more iffy. You see, it kind of split the yarn. So what we want to do is take our needle, just undo that split by folding it over the end of our piece. You don't need to be too gentle with it. You just don't want to accidentally cut your yarn. There you go. So now it's free from the stitch. Place our little locking mechanism in there and just lock it into place like that. Okay, now let's look at the outside. All right, so we can see here that we're pretty close to what we want, but there's a few things that we want different. First is that this one kind of has a little bit of a wonky look going on where it's just not as pronounced as the other side. This one I would say is near perfect, actually. The only thing I'd want to do is maybe like stuff this little bit into the body. So I'm just going to use the back of my needle for that. The other eye here, we need to do some tweaking. So what we can do here is first, we're going to take our needle. You can use any kind of needle for this. Place it under the eye and just kind of stretch that white on the outside a little bit more so that there's a little bit more white on the outside of our piece. We also want to add just a little bit of white on the inside too. So we're going to do the same thing from the other side. Just pull a little bit of this white, especially along the bottom here, out of our piece a little bit. We're also going to stuff that a little bit. So it always takes a little bit of tweaking for this, but it really pays off in the long run. Okay, so I really like that. I think that's looking super cute. Maybe, let's see, do we like that? Maybe we can just do this a little bit more. Maybe we can tuck that white in there just a little bit. I think that's pretty good though. Yeah, I like it. We can add eyebrows. We can add so many things to make this look even cuter. Maybe we can just add a little bit more white on this side. Stretch it out just a bit. Yeah, I really like that though. I think that's really cute. Okay, so that's adding the eyes. Looks pretty adorable. Great start. Next, we want to add a mouth. So to add mouth, there's a bunch of different ways you can add the mouth. In fact, I have a video tutorial here that'll go through a few different options for making the mouth. But for our case, we're just going to make the mouth really simply by using some black yarn. So we're just going to take some black yarn here and thread it onto our needle. This is just going to be a really simple smile and just the easiest way to add a mouth. To make the smile, we're going to find the space in between the eyes that's perfectly like 2 to 3 stitches away. I actually usually like to add the mouth a little high up on the face. Some people like to add the mouth lower, but I actually like to almost make it even with the eyes. So I'm going to go up from right here next to these eyes and pull it out just so there's enough to knot together on the inside. I actually think this is a little long, but that's okay. Then we're going to go and find where we want the other side. So we're going to go 1, 2 stitches away, maybe to like right here, and just into the body, back into the body. This is going to create a little line like that, which actually already is a pretty cute face, you know? Looks very stone-faced, which is great because he's a rock. But let's make it a smile instead. To make it a smile, we're going to come out through the center of the stitch in between these two lines, the ends of our lines. So right here, see how this stitch right here? That's actually a single crochet. So this would be between 2 stitches and this would be between 2 stitches. But this time we want to come out through the very center of where this V is. So we're going to take our crochet hook from the inside, kind of wiggle our way into the center of that stitch, just like that. And pull it through the stitch. Try not to accidentally lock any other piece. We kind of locked that white yarn, but that's all right. Lock it in place. Now we're going to go around that bar and back into the same stitch you came out of, just like that. So just around the bar and the same stitch, pull it all the way in. And we're going to pull it pretty tight so that the knot gets pulled in and it turns into a little V. Don't worry, we're going to fix that V to make it more of a circle in just a second. But before we do that, we want to take these 2 ends on the inside and just double knot them together. Easy squeezy, just 1 and 2. Now, if you didn't add a face while you've been crocheting this, by the way, you can add your face after the fact. And in that video tutorial I pointed to up there, I'll go through details on how to add faces after you've already sewn something shut. All right, so we've double knotted it together. We look at the outside now, and we've got this cute little V, and it is actually really cute as is, but let's round it out by just using our needle and just kind of rounding the face out, the smile out just a little bit. And it actually goes a really long way. Look how cute that is now. Just adorable little smile. Very cute little rock showing up. Oh my gosh, so cute. There's our little bumps on the back. He's got some inconsistencies, which is perfect for a rock. You don't want him to be too perfect. He's got just a couple little bumps on the back of his head. Okay, so that's adding the mouth. We added the eyes. Now what? Now we can start to close our piece in. I mean, obviously, if you wanted to add more height, this is your opportunity. But for us, we're going to start to close our piece up now, and we're going to learn about decreasing in our rounds. So in our first few rounds, we increased it up, and then we made it bigger and bigger. Now for our next 4 rounds, at least 4, we're going to decrease it down. If you made your piece bigger, if you decided to increase it longer and longer so that your stitch count was 36 stitches or 42 stitches or however big you made it, you're going to have to add additional rounds of decreasing to your piece to make it close up perfectly. Now that's some advanced talk, but for our case, because I didn't do anything fancy, I didn't add any additional increases, we're just going to decrease in a very similar way as we increased. So our last round of increasing, we did 3 single crochets here. If we look all the way back to the start here, we did 3 single crochets. That's 1, 2, 3 single crochets, and then an increase was 2 in the same stitch. In this next round, we're going to do the opposite. We're going to do 3 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to do a decrease. For a decrease, we're going to get to it in just a moment, but there's actually a few different ways to decrease, and I'll show you a video up here which goes through a few different ways, but I'll show you my favorite way, which is going to be an invisible decrease. A decrease is basically going to remove a stitch from our final stitch count. So we're going to do that 6 times around. So it's basically the opposite of what you were doing for your last round of increasing. So here we go. Let's pull our stitch marker up and get started here. We're going to start by doing 3 single crochets to get to our first invisible decrease. So there's 1, 2, and 3 single crochets to get started. Now we're going to do an invisible decrease. For an invisible decrease, again, this is my favorite decrease, but there's a few different options for decreasing, but this one's my favorite because it's really hidden and easy to do. You just take your crochet hook, and we're going to go, instead of going into both loops like we've been doing before, this time we only want to go into this first front loop, only in the front loop. So we're going to take our crochet hook, instead of this needle, we'll take our crochet hook, go under this first front loop, and then loop our hook around and go into the second front loop. So we're going to go into the next 2 front loops simultaneously. This maybe is not the easiest way to decrease, but it is the cleanest, and I highly suggest you try this if you can. If you want a more simple way, again, check out the video that I linked up here or in the description. It'll go through it a little bit cleaner. All right, so for our invisible decrease though, we're going to take our crochet hook, go under the first bar. The easiest way is to kind of poke up from the bottom like that. So you're only under that first front bar. Then loop your crochet hook around to get into position into the second front loop. Poke up through the second front loop. Once you're into both of those front loops, you want to just do a single crochet. So we'll yarn over, and we want to scoop, really twist the crochet hook to line up with the hole and scoop it through, and then yarn over again and pull through the 2 loops on the hook, 1 and 2. And that's going to be an invisible decrease. You can see, you can barely even see where it is. It's right here, but it's really hard to see because it's an invisible decrease. Okay, so that's our repeat. 3 single crochets, 1 invisible decrease, repeated 6 times around to bring your stitch count down from 30 down to 24. If you made your piece bigger, you want to do 4 single crochets and then an invisible decrease. So you would repeat that to be bigger, to be more decreasing, depending on how big your piece is. But for our piece, we're just doing 3 single crochets between invisible decreases. The next single crochet after your invisible decrease can be a little bit hard to see. If you look from the top, it's going to be where the next full V is. So that's going to be right here. See, this one is kind of interrupted because our crochet hook's in the place, but this stitch is going to be our next full stitch. So we're going to take our crochet hook and go under both bars of that next stitch and start our second repeat. So that's 1, 2, 3 single crochets to get into position for our next invisible decrease, and then another invisible decrease. Again, it's going to be front bar only, 1, second front loop only, 2, yarn over and single crochet by twisting, tucking through, yarn over again, pull through 2. All right, so that's our repeat. 6 times around to bring your stitch count down. So let's do 1 more of those repeats. 3 single crochets, 1, 2, and 3, and then our invisible decrease. Front loop, front loop. Notice how I just do that really easy now. I don't even scoop around. I just front loop, front loop. I hold my crochet hook really close to do that. Have more control over my crochet hook. And then a single crochet, twist and pull through, twist and pull through. All right, let's do that again. 3 single crochets. And notice how our mouth kind of changed positions again. It's back to a V. We'll fix that at the end of our piece because we're tweaking it as we're going. So we're like kind of undoing what we did last time. But yeah. Hey, as I go and finish this round up, I don't think a lot of people watch at this part of this video because, you know, they're just like, oh, I don't need to learn how to repeat. So here is a secret. If you are watching this video right now and you want to enter a secret giveaway, all you need to do is comment in the down below with an emoji of a pair of scissors. If you comment with emoji of pair of scissors during the live crochet along for this video or for this pattern, I'm going to give away I think a gift card to our shop. So go ahead and comment down below, and we're gonna pretend I never said that, because I really don't think a lot of people watch this part of the video. So it'd be cool if you did. Also, you can say whatever you want, but just include a pair of scissors, and I'll announce it during my giveaway, and I'll reply to the comment. Okay, let's pretend I never even said that and get back to our piece. Okay, and that's going to be the end of round 12, our first round of invisible decreasing down. Now we're on to round 13, and you can kind of see it's starting to pull in a little bit. For our next round, round 13, we're basically going to do the same thing again. So we'll pull our stitch marker up, but this time we're going to do one less single crochet between our invisible decreasing. So for this round, our last round we did 3 single crochets and then an invisible decrease. This round we're doing just 2. So we're going to go into our next stitch, pull through, so we're doing 2 single crochets like that, and then our invisible decrease. We go front loop, and then our single crochet. And then we'll repeat that process 6 times around, which is going to bring our stitch count down again. So our stitch count from last round was down to 24. The stitch count at the end of round 13 that we're currently on is going to bring us all the way down to back down to 18 stitches around. There you go. I just did our second repeat. Let's do our third repeat, 2 single crochets, 1 and 2, and then our invisible decrease. By the way, if I'm going too quick for you, or this is still confusing, please let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to help, but also consider joining our live crochet alongs. It's a great opportunity for you to ask questions and get help from me live, and I can go through details of like, oh, you know, you can say my stitches look this way and I can help you out live, or whatever. It's a really good opportunity to get extra help. Okay, so we got one more round here, 2 single crochets, or one more repeat rather, 1, 2, 1 invisible decrease here. All right, and that's going to be the end of round 13. You can see our piece is really starting to close up now. Okay, we only got actually 2 more rounds of decreasing before we're done with this piece. So we actually only have 2 more rounds in general. Okay, so for our second to last round, that's going to be round 14, we're going to be doing 1 single crochet and then an invisible decrease. So we're repeating that same kind of repeat over and over, except this time instead of doing 2, we're doing just 1 single crochet. So the same pattern is going over and over. Let's also get our stitch marker out and pull it out like that. And this is why I love this stitch marker method. You can just see exactly where the ends of your rounds are throughout your entire piece. It makes it a lot easier. And you don't have to keep removing the stitch marker every time. All right, 1 single crochet in the first, and then 1 invisible decrease. So front loop, and then our single crochet. There you go. 1 single crochet, 1 invisible decrease, front loop, single crochet. You just want to do this 6 times in a row. And this time your stitch count is going to go down another 6 stitches. So the stitch count at the end of the last round was 18. The stitch count at the end of this round is going to go all the way down to 12 stitches around, which is almost all the way closed up. 1 single crochet, 1 invisible decrease, and then 1 more repeat here. 1 single crochet, and then 1 invisible decrease. Front loop, pull through, 2, just like that. Okay, now we're going to pull our loop out just a bit before we do our very last round, and that's because we want to stuff the rock mostly right now. Now, I like to use a bunch of different things for stuffing. First off, I'm going to use any thread, any extra yarn that we had from our piece, but we also want to just use regular classic stuffing as well. The other thing you can do before I finish stuffing it up is you can add some magnets in your piece. I usually like to add just a couple of magnets, just throw it in there and then use another magnet. These are my neodymium magnets. I really like using these for a piece. And we're just going to place another magnet on the top to line up with where we want the magnet to be. And the reason we want to do that is because later on we're going to create pieces to add on to our rock. And I like to add little things like frogs, which will, well, I did the magnet backwards, but which will magnetically attach to the top. So things like that. But it's your only opportunity to add those magnets is right now. So I'm just going to throw a magnet in there and then stuff our piece up a bit. Again, you don't really need to add the magnets, obviously. If you don't have them, obviously do not worry about it at all. But it is kind of fun. It's just kind of a nice little secret thing that you can add to your piece. And I'm just going to keep stuffing it. The rule of thumb for stuffing, by the way, is you want to stuff it enough so that when you squish it, it doesn't hold its position. So right now, if I squish it, see, it's going to stay indented in like that. So you want to stuff it enough where if you squish it, it'll bounce back to its position, but not so much stuffing that you can see your stuffing through your stitches. That's really important. You're going to start to see your stuffing through your stitches more and more, especially if you made your piece really loose. You know, if you were crocheting really loosely, then the stuffing's going to show through your stitches a lot more. I think this is pretty good for right now. So I'll just do this much right now. We're going to have one more opportunity to stuff it after this next round though. All right, that's pretty good. You can see he's got more shape to the head, and you can see how much lower those eyes are than you thought they were going to be. Once you add stuffing, it really fills out the crochet. Okay, so we got one more round of decreasing, and then we can stuff it a little bit more before we fully sew it closed. So for our last round, I'm actually not going to pull our stitch marker up. We're just going to ignore it. And for our last round, we're just going to do an invisible decrease 6 times around. So 1 invisible decrease for every 2 stitches around. So we're going to start with our first one, front loop only, and front loop only. Notice how I'm holding my piece off to the side like this. It makes it just a little bit easier to get our stitches in. So instead of holding my finger in the inside, I'm holding the piece on the outside and then crocheting around it like that. And I'm keeping my yarn taut all the way up here. Okay, just take this one at a time. Okay, so I'm not even like really holding the yarn at all right now. I'm just holding the piece. I'm going to take my crochet hook, go into the front loop, and then the next front loop right here, like that. So notice I'm only in those front loops. Then I can grab my yarn over, pull it under the stitch, under both of those front loops, yarn over again, pull through 2, 1 and 2. Okay. Front loop, single crochet. Just take it really slow. When you're first doing this, I'm making it look a lot easier than it is. When you're first doing this piece, this last round of decreasing can be really difficult. So just take it really slow and know that if you mess up this last round, it's not a big deal. This is the bottom of our piece anyhow. No one's going to see it. So if you really goof it up, it's really not the end of the world. All right, we got one more round or one more decrease here, front loop and front loop like that, pull through and yarn over, pull through 2 like that. Okay, I'm going to cut my yarn. You'll know that it's the end of your piece, by the way, if you count your stitches back and you only have 6 stitches around. So if you pull this loop out right here and start where that loop is coming out, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This 6th one can be kind of hard to see, but it's right there on the inside. Okay, so we cut our yarn now. You want a relatively long end. I mean, not too long, about that long is fine, maybe less than a foot. And then just pull it all the way, oops, get my needle out there. Pull this yarn all the way through, just like that, and it'll pull it all the way out. Okay, now before I sew it fully closed, we want to start by, let's remove our stitch marker. The easiest way to remove the stitch marker is just actually pull it on out. Just be really like delicate with it, but it'll actually just come out like that, which is pretty nice and easy. Then we want to take some extra stuffing and probably our stitch marker here. And we're just going to stuff it into the piece. The easiest way to do that is either with the back of your crochet hook. Now, in my case, the back of my crochet hook is actually just a little bit big. So instead of using the back of my crochet hook, I'm going to be using a chopstick for this. And I'll just take the stuffing here and I kind of poke it in. You know, I kind of scoop it in rather. So I grab it from the side, scoop it, and poke in. Scoop, poke. And I'll just keep doing that until my piece is stuffed as much as I want it to be. And like I said before, you don't want to overstuff it. You really don't want to overstuff it. It looks weird when it's overstuffed and it's hard to undo. So try not to overstuff it if you can. Okay, that's pretty good. Let's get all that extra yarn in there. And let's feel our stuffing here. Oops, we lost our little magnet, but that's okay. It's somewhere up here. Yeah, right there is perfectly good. Okay, maybe a little bit more stuffing. Just a little bit, honestly. We don't need too much more. There we go. Nice. Make sure the stuffing is all the way around it. It maybe is a little understuffed, but okay, fine. Fine, Mr. Rock. We'll give you a little bit more stuffing. I'm going to use the back of my chopstick now. Might be a little easier. There we go. Okay, now the last part of our main rock pattern is we want to sew it closed. Easiest way to sew it closed is to just thread this end on a needle, and then take your needle and go under the front loops only of the last 6 stitches around. So we're going to go into the next front loop. So right here will be the next one. Only into the front of that loop and pull it all the way through. Then the next front loop and pull it all the way through. We do that for 6 of them. So there's 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the last one will be right here, 6. Grab it close to the bottom right here and just pull it nice and tight, and it'll close it all the way up. And then go straight back down through the center. See, it's kind of got a point right now, but if you go straight through the center and then out through pretty much anywhere you want on the side of your piece. I usually like putting it on the back just to be safe. I pull it all the way through, and you want to pull it tight enough so that it flattens that bottom up like that. And we can cut the yarn really close. You do not need a very long end, just nice and close like that. And, oh, and we want to tweak the smile a little bit too. I want to make it a little bit more of a rounded smile. So we're just going to go ahead and tweak that so that it's a little bit more rounded. Maybe stuff this end a little bit more in too. Nice. That's cute. Oh my gosh, that's so cute. It's perfect. Wow. Thank you so much for crocheting this pattern along with me. It means so much. I hope you enjoyed making it as much as I enjoyed designing it. And this pattern was so much fun to design, especially the advanced techniques that we're going to be moving on to in part 2. So in part 2, we'll be moving on to things like how to make sprouts, how to add grass patches and eyebrows, little needle felted moss, and special friends for your rocks, and then special advanced techniques like gems and a pipe cleaner pickaxe. You can find links for all of the part 2 patterns in the description down below. If you like this video, please like down below, subscribe to the channel, and hit the little bell icon so you don't miss when we come out with new live crochet alongs. By the way, please join the live crochet alongs. We'll probably be doing a live crochet along for Pet Rocks very soon. In fact, I have a feeling throughout the season we'll be doing a few Pet Rock live streams, so make sure to like and subscribe to join those. If you want more Woolly Woods themed patterns like our Bigfoot or gnomes or barn owls, a bunch of different Woolly Woods themed patterns. Links for all those are in the description or at clubcrochet.com/woods. If you really like what's going on here and you want to join the Club Crochet Challenge, there is going to be a Club Crochet Challenge specifically about your pet rock, and it'll give you a chance to win a free seasonal crochet kit. To learn more about the Club Crochet Challenge, check out clubcrochet.com/challenge. The challenge should be running pretty soon, and you can use your pet rock that you crocheted from this video tutorial as your submission for the challenge. Thanks again for watching. Pasta la pizza, happy hooking, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Want to say bye? All right. Bye.